Hello and welcome to the Madecast, the official podcast of the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, a series of lectures on video game history as part of the Made's ongoing effort to preserve history through teaching and displaying playable exhibits of rare games and consoles.
While life in the time of COVID has forced us to close our doors, support of people like you has allowed us to continue to bring history to you through lectures and interviews like the one you'll hear in a few minutes. My name's Red.
I'm Chin.
I'm Anthony.
And I'm Miles. This week, Alex is chatting with Nedrick Mclaren, animator, game developer, and Made volunteer. They talk about indie development, his transition from art to programming, his inspirations, and the good old days of Newgrounds.
Oh man, the Flash Heaven.
Newgrounds was a treasure.
It was, and it had some of the best games of the early 2000s, if I may say so myself.
Mm-hmm.
All of the games on Addicting Games, all the good ones came from Newgrounds, okay? Like, God, get with the picture.
This was a really interesting talk. I really liked learning about Nedrick's process, sort of his whole transition.
It's very interesting to hear and just to see. And he made a poignant statement in one of it where he was like, it wasn't he thought he was just kind of like navigating this thing alone, and while trying to do it, because he was like going from like C+, not C sharp, but going from learning this program coming from a Flash and animation perspective, really opened his eyes to, other people are in the same boat of trying to transition or like wanting to go do game development how they can. So it was very interesting. He said that about going to conventions and everything. It's like, everybody here is kind of in the same boat. Mm-hmm. So you're not alone out there in your strive to become the next great developer.
Well, we're going to get into that soon enough, but first we've got a bit of news. First one is that we are fairly confident in saying that there is going to be a Dead Space remake. The sort of rumor has been floating around for a while. It seems to be a bit more concrete now.
Classic of horror game.
Dead Space 1 was a fantastic experience. It was absolutely horrifying in all the right ways. And I'm
not having played Dead Space, was there a lot of like jump scares or just thematically terrifying events?
Yes.
Okay. I like that.
It was deeply unsettling.
Good. That's how a horror game should be. I need the existential dread.
Yeah.
Not just the immediate spike in my heart rate. Mm-hmm. I need the steady levels of raised awareness.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll be good, and then maybe the remake will get me into getting it again. Mm-hmm. And then apparently there's some Capcom is doing Resident Evil perfumes.
Yeah, so Capcom is offering 3 brands of Resident Evil perfume based on Leon, Jill, and Chris. No idea what they're going to smell like. Whether it's going to be just sweaty, gross, covered in gore man, or something actually good. But it seems like they've done this before. They also have Monster Hunter perfume, Ace Attorney perfume, and Devil May Cry
Ace
perfume.
Attorney I get, but Monster Hunter?
Yeah, there are some lores in Monster Hunter that makes you wonder how it smells, and I can somehow accept this, and Ace Attorney is just good, Devil May Cry, awesome, but for Resident Evil, it's a little bit weird situation because I don't sure people want to smell like the character inside or
no.
Well, hey, half-eaten zombie brain is the fragrance of the summer. Get with it, y'all.
Maybe you use it and people say, hey, you smell like a rotten fish in the market, and you're just like, oh, that's great because I used the Resident Evil perfume. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, I know, it smells amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm in the game.
It's so realistic.
It's so realistic. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how they go with that. I'm I mean, I'm sure they're gonna sell out. I don't think it's any worse than any other kind of like capitalizing video game merch that's been.
Don't
out
get
there.
me wrong; it's a very fun collectible items.
Well, I'm just kind of bummed that Ace Attorney hasn't released an official Ace Attorney gavel for judges. I mean, that would be the most sense-making thing, to have all the judges in Japan have an Ace Attorney gavel. But we'll see what goes on. And the next little bit of news, Netflix is reportedly working on live-action Pokemon series. Discuss.
Thoughts?
I think that explains our thoughts on that already.
Well, I mean, we were talking a little bit about this before we got into the
We have
recording
talked
of this
about
episode.
live-action films way too many times before.
Well, yeah. But the way to do a live action thing is to do like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Keep the 2D sprite, keep the 2D animation character, and just place them in the real world. You don't need to do you don't need to make a green screen world like Space Jam. And then just have one guy acting around a green screen world.
So do you know it is gonna be like the Detective Pikachu one that they have special designs for a Pokemon, or is it they're gonna redo it?
I hope they. Well, I mean, if the internet is the internet that I know, they will release a teaser of some newly designed character, and then beat them up online until they make it look like the actual Pokemon, like they did with Sonic. The internet bullied a production studio into reanimating an entire character, like just throwing away hundreds and hundreds of hours of animation work that these people did. And it's like, oh, they don't like it, gotta do it again. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, any live action thing, I always hope that it would be that it'll be fun and it'll be good. But I also am starting to lean more towards, this could just be kind of campy and fun to look at. Doesn't need to be taken super serious.
I wonder.
People try and make every live action game or every game into a live action show and make it super serious while taking the kind of, fun elements of the game out. But we'll see.
I wonder what happened if they let the director of the Resident Evil film to handle the Pokemon live action. Like you see Pokemon running to fight the army or something like that, or there will be guns in Pokemon. I have no idea.
There were guns in Pokemon. Do you remember?
I mean,
yeah, but like there's also going to be Pokemon. Like you're going to be seeing like up close and personal shots of Pokemon trauma centers. Like you're going to see like Pikachu with broken arms and like a bone sticking out. It's going to be like super. Yeah, it's going to make you like think, oh man, maybe Pokemon fighting is animal abuse.
Well, listen, Lieutenant Surge fought in the war. That's canon.
Yeah. What war? Just
the war.
Yeah, he fought in the war. It's Pokemon. They only
war.
had one. Yeah.
The big Pokemon wars.
Yes. Fighting alongside Pokemon. They're my brothers. They're not my... I don't own them. We fought alongside together. They just live in my pocket.
Like, there's no way it's going to be that because it's still a kid's property. But I would actually be very interested in seeing a like dark, dingy, serious Pokemon property.
So is this our next YouTube project as a team? Is this
Absolutely
what we're
not.
Be doing? All right. Okay. Well, I think it's about time we throw it on over to Alex and Ned for their marvelous talk about the transition from Flash animation into making games. So you'll hear more of our mugs later, but for the important thing where you came to listen, here's Alex with Nedrick Mclaren.
And we're back with Nedrick Mclaren. Welcome, Ned.
Hey, what's going on?
Ned, you've been a volunteer at the Maid for a number of years and have helped teach and so forth. How did you find the museum?
I actually found out about the museum when I was at one of the GDC shows, and I think you had a booth up, and I came by, and I was asking about what is this, the Maid. You went into the whole spiel of what the Maid is and what it does, and then I was like, interesting.
And what were you doing at GDC?
I was actually there presenting a game that I was working on called Born Fighters at the time. So I went there to present that and also to, find out about GDC, because I've been to other events like, what is that, SIGGRAPH, but then I decided, let me try something else. So GDC was the next thing in line.
Now, I mean, you've been an indie developer for a while. Is it your career or is it the side job, or how do you make it fit in with your life?
Well, I kind of shifted over to just being dev after, because my background is animation, 3D animation and video editing. So pretty much I wanted to take the next step of moving from from animation to something else, which was game dev. And I said, let me try it out. And so I jumped into it with not patrolling, Born Fighters in Flash, actually. And that's where I was actually navigating, because basically I knew a lot about Flash. I was there when it first came up. So I knew a lot of ways to program in it. But my background is not really heavily in programming, it's more in animation.
That's an interesting shift to have made, because Flash was an animation tool.
Yep.
But as a development tool, I mean, it sort of broadened the capabilities of what you were able to produce with it, right? Do you miss Flash?
I still use it for all my graphics. So pretty much any graphics that you see in any of my arts or anything, I use Flash for that, because pretty much it's really good in terms of creating things. Like if I compare it to Illustrator, I'm more comfortable using Flash to actually start the work, and then I'll throw it over into Photoshop. I'll rarely touch Illustrator for anything, because I call Illustrator that put it together. But Flash, it's a whole package. You can animate, you can pre-viz, and everything in there. So,
does that mean you have an old machine running an ancient version of Flash somewhere?
I do.
What exactly does that look like? What?
Oh, it works well. It works well. Pretty much, because I pretty much just do all my art, art, anything I'm drawing, I draw it in there, and then I'll bring it over.
I mean, is that running on a modern PC, or do you have to use an old computer for it? Or
no, I still have a Windows 7 and Windows 8 computer, so my Windows 8 is where I do my work on.
Gotcha. It's interesting what you find. A lot of artists, when they find the tool they like, they want to stick to it. But in the software development world, that is really hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Because they normally shut them down. But Adobe still has Flash. There is Adobe Animate, but you have that whole monthly subscription, which I'm like, no.
Yeah, indeed. So why don't you tell us about what got you into the world of making games? What inspired you to make games?
Well, firstly, I play a lot of games. Not that much anymore, because I've been working heavily on my game. So pretty much any game playing has been put on the back burner until I finish up my work. But you play games and you wanted to know what made them work, and you start analyzing it, and you're like, oh crap, I can actually do that. And of course, going to GDC, besides the whole avenue of me doing it, really helped push more ideas, because basically you meet a lot of developers or indie developers, and just you're able to pick your mind. You're like, oh wow, I'm not really alone in this avenue, because you don't really hear that much when you're first starting off in college. Well, my time, because I'm a lot older than most of the other people, not older than you, but but the mere fact is that it was not something that you hear about a lot. You might hear about animation. You hear people do game dev, but you think it's something that's beyond your reach. And especially from my area where I'm not, I didn't learn. I learned programming because I needed to. And it was, I couldn't, can't afford a programmer. So I learned it because I needed to do it. So pretty much I learned it and then move on from there.
Yeah, it makes you an interesting sort of asset, as it were, almost like a cartoonist that also or a comic book artist that also writes, for example. It's not often that you hear about people moving from the art side to the programming side. Usually there's programmer's art, right, going the other way.
Mm-hmm. But it's cool. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, did you find it difficult to make the transition? Or, I mean, were there people out there could help you, or do you feel unique and alone?
It was difficult because at first I didn't know where to turn to. And so the whole aspect of learning everything on the go and pretty much trying to figure out your way. And of course, going to GDC, I didn't know what term to consider myself, because again, you try to figure out where pipeline you fit in. And then, they're like, oh, you're more like a technical artist because, you're an artist that can program. I'm like, yeah. And of course, but something suffers down the line, depending. Because, like, for example, if I'm focusing a lot on my programming, my art takes a hit. Because basically now I'm not really drawing that much. I'm focusing more on the programming side or vice versa, depending on what I'm doing. So sometimes something suffers along the line. But it was a difficult thing, but after going to GDC and of course with YouTube and everything else, you find avenues to find. For example, the program I use right now, GameMaker, I knew about it, but I didn't know how to use it. And then of course, when you find videos like on Udemy and YouTube, and people explain to you how it works, and you're like, oh, okay, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting example because GameMaker. When it originally was out there, it had this whole scripting language and nobody documented it. The guy who created it didn't even document his own scripting language, and people were making stuff in it without any kind of documentation. Splunky, I believe Splunky was made before the documentation for GameMaker actually showed up. Oh, wow. And then this ex-Microsoft guy, Sandy, and a bunch of people acquired the company, and the first thing they did were like, we should probably put some documentation out. Stuff. Just unbelievable that you could even produce a software tool without documentation. People were able to use it. That's just the power of games, right? Like,
yeah.
What is it you like about GameMaker?
Easy to use, because from transition from Flash to that, well, depending on which language of Flash you refer to, because basically Flash there was scripting, ActionScript 2, and then ActionScript 3 was more of a programming side. So coming from Flash and knowing both scripting, then jumping straight into GameMaker, and then just learning the logic. Once you learn the logic of programming, anything else would apply. So going straight into GameMaker, it was easier because it wasn't C++. Sorry, C#. It wasn't C#, and so it's like so it was easy to jump into. So it was more like, okay, I can definitely understand this much easier. I can code something quickly, and pretty much the lingo, and depending on the lecturer. Like the lecturer who explained how it works was really good. So once I understood what he was referring to and then the terminology and then the libraries, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And so, some people use the drag and drop feature. I don't, because basically, you want to learn, if you want to really do the heavy lifting, you have to learn the programming side. So learning that really helped a lot. And then it made it, as I'm still learning more things, because there are things that I'm like, wait, oh, okay, that's a faster way to do something. And once I learned the key functionality of it, it made it so much simpler. And a lot of people tend to use forgot there's another one, Godot or something like that. And
yeah,
I may go to it one day, but not yet.
I mean, they're very powerful tools, but it's that very, the graphic user interface is sort of what the appeal is for getting people started. Once you start using just the scripting language inside of it, is there still the time savings over C++? I mean, or C# or any of those other things?
If you're a heavy duty programmer, obviously you're probably going to be using more robust tools than GameMaker. For me, it's easier because that's what and the funny thing is that I'm comfortable working with GameMaker for 1.4. There's version 2, but the GUI interface is a lot different, and that's a big turnoff for me for version 2. So I still do all my work in 1.4 and then convert it. Well, for patrolling right now. Maybe when I do another game, I'll do everything in 2 because basically I don't like switching programs in between a project because things break. Never. Yeah. So I don't want to break anything. So I do all the work in 1.4 and then just do a conversion into 2 and then push it out.
That's perhaps maybe the most important message of the day is never switch tools mid-project.
Yeah. You break things.
Absolutely. And you slow yourself down. I mean, the most powerful tool for anybody is the one that they're fast in, like we recently use Flash.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if you could talk about Patrolin and what inspired you want to make this game, and how has the process of development been for you?
Well, Patrolling is actually based on the web series that my brother and I created a few years back. So we actually did the Patrolling web series. So it's about 4 episodes long. It would have been longer, but that's a different story. But once we created that whole thing, it was we call it a hip opera, because I saw like in the early days of YouTube, there was this thing called the Predator hip opera. And that was hilarious. And after I saw that, I said to myself, you know what, let's actually do something that ties in my animation knowledge with my brother's music knowledge. So then we created the Patrolin. And it was just pretty much supposed to be a one-off. And then once he did the first one, I was like, okay, we got something here. So we created 4-part series. And it was fun. And after I did that, I said, you know what, well, because my brother and I, we went off on different ventures. So I was like, okay, how am I going to bridge everything together to make, try to complete it? So I started to, rough up the Patrolling game, and, came up with some ideas. It took a while to actually finalize on how it's going to work. And then once I got the formula working just about right, and then pulled in one of my good buddies who was a writer, and so I said, hey, I'm going to have to hire you. How much it costs? Boom. And, I made him rewrite the synopsis for the game. And he wrote up a good draft and everything. And it worked. And once I had that, and then I could then storyboard the whole game. But the game is actually split into 2, which I'll explain even further. But it's a whole thing. Just coming from that web series to the animation was a big process itself.
So how did you and your brother become so artistic? He's the musician, you're the artist. What inspired you guys growing up?
A lot of cartoons.
Now, anime or American cartoons?
Well, I would say Japanese animation for me. For my brother, we watch a lot of cartoons in general. But the funny thing is, growing up, we didn't know the difference between Japanese animation and in American animation. We were just watching stuff, and then of course, as you get older, you're like, oh, it's more Japanese animation, okay. But still, just watching animation as a whole is what pretty much got me into more of going to art school, and then doing all that stuff and playing games and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were growing up, since you did have a brother, were there any 2-player games that you just couldn't stop playing, anything like that?
Yeah, we play Street Fighter a lot.
Street, of course.
Oh, and Killer Instinct a lot.
Yeah, excellent stuff.
But yeah, those were, and pretty much, we grew up, since there was just 2 of us at the time, we have 3 of us now. But at the time when we were, in our young age, we played mostly 2-player games, like Mario, whichever, or, Donkey Kong Country, pretty much, those, because my parents were more of, going to play a single-player game. Of course, when I grew up and I had my own life, I bought my PlayStation, had my own, RPG games I can play by myself, solo, and so forth.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a Super Nintendo growing up.
I did, and I couldn't afford the NES at the time, or actually, my parents were not buying no NES at the time.
Can you explain sort of the mood when the SNES arrived in the house?
It was a weird mood, because basically your family were like, well, you play too much games and all this, so it wasn't a, hey, we're buying this from, this is if you're off, you're out of school, you play the game kind of a thing. So it was a different kind of a mood, but it was more of entertaining, because, again, you have now a gaming system that, everyone else had or whichever or have, and you move forward from there. But then, of course, the PlayStation was the big jump, for me after that. Yeah,
certainly. Again, with those single-player games, I mean, the RPGs on the PlayStation. What are some of your favorite games?
Let's see. Are you talking about currently, or?
Well, whatever. Anything. What comes to mind when I say that?
Well, the one game that jumps right into my head right away would be, I would say, Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight for me was I bought that game. I can't even tell you how many times I spent money. But I have a collector's edition. I have the Switch edition. I have the Xbox edition. I have a second collector's edition that's not open. So pretty much, I supported that game because basically that and Hyper Light Drifter. There are other games too because I like to support indies because pretty much you look back at the indie crowd and I'm a big supporter of if there's an indie project that I like, I'll support it over a AAA more than anything.
See, those are absolutely spectacular choices. I love both of those games. Have beaten both of them. But what I would say about Hollow Knight is that didn't that start as a Flash game too?
It did. When I tracked back, I was like, oh my god, and that's the thing. Like even going back to the whole Flash game on Newgrounds, because Newgrounds was a big area where I dumped all of my animation or any test idea, even the patrolling game. So the patrolling is on there, and I think Born Fighters is there too. But then that group, they created Alien Hominid. And of course, that was a big thing too. Once I saw Alien Hominid and I saw that group made that game, I think that was the big push to say, you know what, I can probably make a game. Let me see what I can do. And I know it's a team that made it, but let me see what I can actually attempt to do. And I think doing Born Fighters was the biggest leap because basically I incorporated a lot more than in terms of like my animation in that because it was a fighting game. I made like probably 6 characters. And I hand animated everything for all the characters and the movesets and everything, and I learned a lot from that. And then I learned you need a team. Don't screw around, especially if it's a big project. Try to get a team together if you can, because I think that was way harder to do because it was my first game than to do patrolling. Patrolling, I learned a lot, but I learned a crap ton from doing Born Fighters.
I mean, a fighting game, the animation requirements alone would be a full-time job.
Tell me about it.
So we should probably talk about Newgrounds. I don't think we've touched on it in the podcast. That was a remarkable sort of community, and I think it gets sort of a bad rap because it was tied up to the something awful in 4chan worlds, But the stuff that came out of there was truly world-changing in a lot of regards.
Oh no, great! No, Newgrounds was a great area, because basically it's where you could showcase your work. You can get ideas. You can get people for music and sound and everything else. So it gives you a lot of experience, and like you get critiqued, and people are very brutal, and that's where I learned. Just if someone's critiquing your work, just say thank you and let it go. Don't try to battle it because they will definitely tear you apart on that page. But you learned a lot from, because there's people that will give you pointers. You get good feedback, and especially at the time when it was in its heyday, there was just so much different animation going on there. That so many people that are actually doing great right now started there, and even if you go back there today, you still see, a lot of new faces putting up new things, using new tools, and really doing well, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's one of those crucibles that you see through history where there's like a place where a lot of famous or successful people come out of. Some chat rooms were like that. Music collaboration places in the 60s for krautrock, and so Newgrounds really was this proving ground, as it were. Do you still keep in touch with anybody from there?
There are 1 or 2 people that I link up with, but it's just because I'm not there all the time. I've been focusing more on the gaming side of things. I was just working on my game, so it's a little rough, especially even when I was trying to find someone to do the music for the game. I went there first because basically I know that they had a good sound area, and the music was good, but it just didn't match up with what I wanted for the game.
Was your brother not available to do the music?
Well, not for this, because he does more of like vocals and things like that. I needed someone who's actually a musician per se or a composer, and
gotcha.
So I have a cousin that does compositions, but he was not available for that. So I was able to find someone on Itch. Actually, I can't even say Itch. It was Humble Bundle. I found this person on Humble Bundle. I heard one of his tracks, and I was like, huh. Then I reached out to him and connected to him on itch.io. And pretty much from there, was able to connect him. His name is Joel Studler, and he really did great. He had great tracks and things that I really felt would work well for the game.
So if people are interested in patrolling, you mentioned it was on Newgrounds, but what should they do if they want to check this game out?
Well, the older version is on Newgrounds. If they need to actually get the game, it's actually on the Google Play Store right now. They go to Google Play and just look at patrolling WTH. What the hell? They will actually find that game. And the funny thing is the game, what you're seeing there is actually the second working of that game. The main game is actually has a story and everything. And the funny enough, how I came about with this version of patrolling was an accident. I was just doing something, and then the enemies were just attacking harder. I was like, I wonder if people will like just survival version while I work on the main game. And so I decided to split the game into two. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to make one thing that's just survival, just to get it out there so people can actually get a taste of the game. And then I'll still, give it a casual mode for people who are not into crazy shoot 'em up parts and just want to just relax and play. And then, of course, the other sections are just hard. And then the main game is one with a story, which is, of course, it's right between the casual and hard kind of a thing, but it has more fluff, and pretty much that's where the story element is. So that's why I had to break it into two, because it was a lot of work just trying to get everything right, and I think breaking it into two helped a lot for my mind.
Well, Ned, thanks for showing up today on the podcast and taking the time, and good luck on patrolling.
No worries. Thank you. And thanks again for having me here, Alex.
Thank you. And thanks for all the work you've done for the museum over the years.
Yes, it was great. Oh, speaking of which, the museum was also the greatest source of where I got a lot of feedback, and just looking at, just watching the kids grow up learning programming. That was a very, very big inspiration. And even just seeing the whole showcase of the content that you guys had there, like just the game contents and different people that came through with me, things, you have a different feeling when you left that place. So,
we're working hard to bring it back, and someday hopefully we can put your son through the
Oh, definitely.
All right, thank you, Ned.
No worries. Thanks again, Alex. Have a good day.
Thanks.
We're back. Okay. Sorry, little peek there in little peek on the recording.
I always have
difficult
this week fixing that peak, so you better
just
make
chop
it
it out.
smaller.
Yeah, you can just pop it out. I mean, we're back. Here's a second one for you. That wasn't quite a peak, so secondary, we're good. So, thank you, Ned, for your talk about everything else, and thank you, Alex, for bringing him on to give us the info and the lowdown about the animation side of things and trying to transform it and trying to get over, as well as hearing how Ned started up and how he got to what his influences were. So he also mentioned that he played Street Fighter and was also just a fan of like cartoons and animation, and for the longest time didn't realize that there was a difference between Japanese animation and American animation, but they just ended up watching cartoons. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And for him to play Street Fighter, I think that's like a perfect combination of everything that was going on. I think that combines those two interests very well, because it is a game that's essentially a cartoon fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
But with Japanese animation, like all the sprites. I mean, Chrono Trigger was, I'm sure, that's the staple of the time. When you get Toriyama to do all your art for a game and then make the biggest fighting anime franchise. Well, bam. But if you want to go check out some of Ned's games, you can check out Born Fighters. You can Google that and check that out. It's a flash fighting game. Looks very, very fun. I highly recommend everybody checking that out when you get a chance. Mm-hmm. And then there's also Portals. I may be saying that wrong. I'll need to go check that out again. But you can check out him and his brothers Jesus, animated web series, if you want to go check that out. But what have you all been playing? What's been going on? What games have been piquing everybody's interest? Is there anything new, or has it just been the same kind of thing?
Well, actually, I got my hands on I got to play a PlayStation 5 for the first time over the weekend.
Oh.
And I got to test out Miles Morales Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
The PS5 controller wasn't everything I thought it would be. As far as like the adaptive triggers, I thought they would have a little bit more resistance to them. And maybe that's just personal preference, but it didn't really seem like too much of a whole game changer.
I thought the same thing as well initially, but like the trigger adaptive, when I was playing it originally, I was like, oh, I'm only just pressing this far of a way down. But then once the game turned off and I felt how far the triggers actually go back, I'm like, oh, it is a little bit adaptive. I did try like shooting a bow on Dark Souls, or Demon Souls rather. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where it clicked a little bit better for how it goes, because it got progressively stronger the more you pulled down. Like the more you pulled down and like the longer you held it, the more pressure it would put back on you. And I thought, otherwise, I also got it's a meaty controller for my meaty hands, and I appreciate that. It's no original Xbox console sized controller, but
it's a meaty size console as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. It's as big as, like, it's bigger than some PC towers. Certainly bigger than many Steam machines that I've seen out there. It's a heckin' chonker. It's a big boy.
I don't have too much problem with the PS5 controller, maybe just because I never use it on PS5 because I don't have one, but I do have the controller. Maybe just because of that, those fantastic function was usually not used in the game I was using it to play, so I guess that's probably why.
Well, there are a couple newer games on I forget the exact names of these games, but there's like 2 or 3 games that have recently come out on PC that also use the adaptive trigger capabilities. So that's something to check out if you have the controller. I recently upgraded to the Nintendo Pro controller, which I do enjoy very much. I have it. I've been playing Breath of the Wild more with it.
Great.
And again, if you didn't know, it's a pretty good game. I would recommend it. There's a couple things with it, but overall, it's a positive experience. I'm having a huge blast with it. I was doing a lot of exploring because that's how I play these kind of games. Just wandering.
How's the progress of the game? What have you been doing?
Getting some shrines. I've been trying to get the towers unlocked so I can see more of the map and not be shrouded in shadow. But I also kept getting. It only took me until yesterday to realize what I was doing wrong when I was exploring thundercloud prone areas. I thought I had removed every piece of metal, but apparently I didn't. So that's why I was still getting death shocked. And it was also amazing for that to happen immediate. It would save my game, it would death shock me, and then it would reload right into immediate shocking. And I'm like, why? I took off everything. Boomerangs that are metal also attract lightning, so unequip that. That's my lesson to all of you out there. But the gameplay is super fun. I need to get a little bit more technical with fighting some of the things that are stronger levels, but we'll get there. So far, I really love the story and the freedom that you have around the world. It's a gorgeous game. It still feels like a game, which is something that a lot of other things don't really feel like at the moment. Some things try to. What I'm trying to say is some things try to go too realistic, and then it just looks kind of weird. But Breath of the Wild went full on into their design aesthetic while still looking like its own world.
Quite a good balance between how realistic and how is it to be fun.
Yeah, I think that the realistic part that I really enjoy is like the physics engine involved and the weather. Those I think make immersion so much better than explicitly like high detail graphics. I love it. I recommend it. Go figure. One of the best games of a few years ago is a good game. And I'm playing it just in time for Breath of the Wild 2, which will be 3-4 years from now.
Well, maybe next year.
Hopefully.
Maybe next year. We'll see. But is that about time? I think it's about time, y'all.
It's about that time.
Well, we want to thank you for listening to the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment's official podcast. If you have any thoughts, questions, corrections, or general museum ideas, shoot us an email at info@themade.org.
We'd like to send out a big thank you to everyone who donated recently and to our patron supporters who keep the Made afloat. Patron donors get to listen to this podcast 1 week before it's released on major streaming service. And we will continue that with future episodes every week. Till then, I'm Chin.
I'm Red.
I'm Anthony.
And I'm Miles. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Later, gamers.
I know it.
There's going to be a supercut.
Oh, I gotta cut it.